Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your neighborhood Unitarian Universalist congregation. My name is Suzanne Mazars. I have your announcements for the coming week. Activities at Neighborhood. Spirit Choir, who is our featured musicians today, rehearse Monday nights from 7 to 9. We start a new round of music not tomorrow, but next Monday. If you're interested in joining the choir, please come talk to me after service. Looks like Peter's show is still up in our art gallery, which is lovely. These photos, as well as along the two galleries upstairs, your last chance to see them would be, I think, right after service today, because they're coming down. New show opens next week. Retrace by Jungling and Ripples by Cameron Brook. We have another games night here in the sanctuary. On April 22nd, that's a Saturday, join your fellow congregants for a fun evening playing board games from 6 to 10 p.m. There's a fundraiser happening in support of Mississauga UU Congregation Social Justice Committee. Neighborhood is donating our space for a fundraiser on the 28th of April to help fund sponsorship of an Afghan family. You can find more info about tickets in our Monday mailing. I'll get the lights just after I'm done the announcements. Don't worry about it. You're welcome. And our AGM is coming up, our annual general meeting, April 30th after service. That's here in our sanctuary, and I believe will be on Zoom as well. Documents were sent this week to anyone who is a member of Neighborhood. And if you would like to be receiving our Monday mailing, you can write to Hala, our office manager, at office@nuuc.ca, and I see our president flagging me. Can you grab on the mic? Okay. So she's saying Zoom is for information only. Office@nuuc.ca. Yep, sorry. Save the date. This is next week, Town Hall after service, in person or on Zoom. Or if you can't make that, April 19th on Zoom only at 7. And this Town Hall is in regards to our proposed bylaw amendments in preparation for our upcoming AGM. So if you'd like to find out what's going on with the changes in our bylaws, you can attend this meeting and learn more. Talk to anyone on the board if you have a question. Board members, could you identify yourselves? So if people have a question, they know who to talk to. Thank you so much. Look at all those board members in the choir. How wonderful. A joining ceremony is happening next Sunday as well after service in the youth room. The youth room is over there. This is for anyone interested in becoming a member. Our AGM, as I mentioned, is the 30th, and you can't vote in the AGM unless you're a member. So this might be a time you would consider strengthening your commitment to the congregation and what's going on here.
And I just wanted to say that this joining ceremony is...
Can't hear you without the microphone. There you go.
So this joining ceremony is different from the one that happens during service. This is for anyone who would like to join but doesn't quite feel comfortable getting up, standing up in front of the congregation, just to make that differentiation.
Thanks. Torrance got it. Pastoral care here at Neighborhood. You can contact Rev Pat for short-term pastoral care on a totally confidential basis. To speak with her via phone, you could come meet her here in person or on Zoom. To discuss issues that you're seeking spiritual guidance on. To reach Rev Pat, you can contact her at pastoralcare@nuuc.ca. This week's question to the community: what is trust to you? How do you recognize trust? We'll be exploring that question in the service and following the service as well. And next Sunday, April 16th, our theme is A Disability Love Story, Moving from Betrayal to Trust. Our speaker is Dr. Patty Douglas. Our service weaver will be Peter Marmarick, and music will be provided by the Comfort Choir.
Welcome. We welcome you to our Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Congregation service. Thank you for joining us, and happy Easter. My name is Gordon Thorne. I will be your service weaver this morning. We start today's service by creating sacred space. I invite you to join me in reading our invocation. Let us cast the circle. And I'd like to invite Dora Girardi and Layla and Jamal to come up and light our chalice this morning. Thank you, Dora. So, Jillian, would you like to come up and introduce the prelude?
Thank you, Gord. Good morning, everyone. For our prelude today, we are going to be presenting Requiem. American singer-songwriter Eliza Gilkyson composed Requiem as a song of grief following the Asian tsunami in December 2004. The song found a renewed audience after Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast region and has been since sung in honor of victims of other natural disasters, as well as most recently those who have died from COVID. On April 1st, we sang Requiem in support of our sisters in Pakistan who are enduring the devastating and long-lasting effects of catastrophic flooding that have taken thousands of innocent lives and destroyed homes, crops, and communities. The arrangement we will present is by Craig Hella Johnson, and you might want to have a tissue on hand.
I start by acknowledging that the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations who lived here before me and live here now. And the music coming from somewhere. Together with other First Nations, Métis and Inuit, I offer my gratitude to our First Nations for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. I will work to honor those teachings. Welcome and good morning. Our musical director is Suzanne Mazars. Our Zoriah Getchell facilitates our children's program. Reese Rogers is taking care of the sound and camera duties, and Sean Thomas is in the back handling the Zoom duties. Today we are graced with the presence of both our very own Spirit Choir and guest speaker Melina Bondy. Welcome to all. As you will learn from our service, our faith is open to many beliefs and learns from many traditions. We welcome all people to our religious community. If you are visiting us for the first time, our services, we welcome you, and we encourage you to stay after for our coffee time. Our services vary from week to week, so we encourage you to sample several to get a better feel for who we are. Our mission at Neighborhood is to empower spiritual growth and shared action for the care of our world. Our theme for April is establishing, growing, extending, and restoring trust. One of the definitions of trust that I found is freedom from suspicion and doubt. But Unitarians historically embraced doubt. It is Easter Sunday, the celebration of the resurrection of Christ, and the roots of Unitarian Universalism are Christian. As Unitarians, we are able to hold the idea of the resurrection at the same time expressing doubt. Doubt can be a strengthener of trust. As our guest speaker Melina writes, doubt can both block one's spiritual path as well as catalyze its deepening. Some would even argue that without understanding doubt, it's impossible to trust anything or anyone, especially oneself. In true Unitarian fashion, Melina brings a Buddhist perspective and will teach us practices to move from doubt to trust. In the words of Barbara Merritt, I'm just going to wait till that comes up. Unitarian Universalist has said for many centuries that there is room in our religion for all seekers. Skeptics and poets and scientists are welcome here, as are nonconformists and shy and uncertain folk. We believe that restlessness and doubts are a sign of grace, and that the love of truth is the holiest of gifts. To my right, I believe it's still there. No, it's gone? Oh, okay. At some point, there will be a monthly altar to my right, and you are encouraged to share in deepening this theme by bringing in objects that meaningfully connect you to trust. We will be storing them away between services, so they'll be safe, and you'll get them back at the end of the service, at the last service of the month. And now is the time to greet your neighbors. After you've greeted a few neighbors, turn to the camera at the back wall. You can see it right next to the projector there. We've moved it a little bit. And then offer a greeting to those who are joining us virtually. Suzanne will sound a chime to end. Now take a moment to greet the neighbors around you.
Welcome, Lynn. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Sigrid. Hi, Deb.
Hey, Doug.
Hi,
Hey,
Doug.
Myrna. Hi. Hi, Sigrid and Susan and
Welcome.
Sean,
Nick.
who's
Hi
busy
there,
doing his
everyone.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi,
Hi,
Kate.
Sean.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Sigrid.
Hello, Sean.
Hi, Myrna.
Hi, Doug.
Good morning.
Boy, they have a good turnout
Hi,
today.
Yvette.
Yeah.
Hey, Deb.
Hello, Deb.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello. Hi,
Hi, Sigrid.
hi, Yvette. And
Hello,
Kate.
Reese.
Hi,
And
Kate.
Reese.
Hello, Kate.
Lynn.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody.
Yes.
Hello,
Good
Sanctuary.
morning, Lynn.
Yes.
Good
Yes.
morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, looks like we're going to start.
Aren't they going to wave to us?
They did. Some of them did.
Okay, I'm going on mute.
Our bodies. And we'll sing an Easter hymn, Now the Green Blade Riseth, which is actually set to a French Christmas tune. Now the green blade riseth from the buried grain. We heard that in dark earth many days has slain. Love lives again, and with the dead has been. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. In the grave they laid him, loved by hatred slain, thinking that never he would wake again. Laid in the earth, like rain that sleeps unseen. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. When our hearts are wintry, grieving or in pain, love's touch can call us back to life again. Fields of our hearts that dead and bare have been, love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. Love is come again, like wheat that springeth green.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to invite the young and young at heart down to the front because it's time for our Time for All Ages. Now, before we get started, I would like to thank our guest speaker, Melina Bondy, for joining us today to talk about growing trust from the compost of doubt. Thank you for coming. So, my friends, today we're talking about trust and doubt. In my opinion, two sides of the same coin. They're like opposite mirrors of each other, like happy and sad, or fire and water. Trust is when you believe in something. Doubt is when you're not sure. Personally, I often feel trust and doubt about the same thing at the same time. That might sound confusing, and it's not always easy, but if you can hold trust and doubt together, it can grow wonderful things. Take this picture that's going to be coming up in just a minute. It's coming. Oh, there it is. There you go. Take this picture up here. Who thinks this food is good for eating? Nobody. That's probably good. Of course not. You doubt that the food will give you any good nutrients, and you trust that it will make you sick. Trust and doubt together. And that's fine, and you can get rid of the moldy food and move on with your life and be totally fine. But if you give it some time and if you give it some attention, you might be able to change that doubt into a different kind of trust. You can take your bad fruits and vegetables and mix them up with some dirt and a whole bunch of worms, and the worms will eat the vegetables. Given some time, they'll poop out the nutrients into the dirt, and the bad food will turn into excellent, healthy dirt, which you can then use to turn into more food, or flowers, or trees, or whatever you decide to do with it. You found a way to turn bad food into healthy plants, to turn that doubt into a different kind of trust. And this won't just work for plants. You can grow that kind of trust from doubt in many areas of your life. But I'll let Melina talk a little bit more about that. For us, why don't we go into our back room for our program now?
This is a unique time in our service where we invite you to share a joy or concern in your life. The recording will be put on pause, please. Please. So occasionally we post a question to the community that ties into or illuminates the service's theme. So let's do that today. The question is, what does trust mean to you, and how do you recognize it? Now, I'll take 3 or 4 answers from this sanctuary, and then we can maybe take 2 or 3 from Zoom. If you're on Zoom and would like to respond, just raise the virtual hand in much the same way you did at Joys and Concerns. When you're called upon, unmute your device and make sure your camera is on so we can see you. So, the question is, what does trust mean to you, and how do you recognize it? Bruce.
I'm never without doubt. So for me, trust is a decision to set aside the doubt and to embrace what is in front of me and take a risk.
Kiara?
To the lights. Like Bruce, I'm never without my doubts. I'm not able to set them aside so much as just headbutt my way through them. So I don't really know how I'd call trust, but I recognize it when I still feel safe to be raw and vulnerable with people despite and regardless of all the very many doubts and anxieties.
Christina.
I recognize trust when someone, like a good friend, makes a promise and follows through with it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sometimes when finding my voice and being put in a role of speaking truth to power, I might make a mistake. For me, trust is being allowed to be a human being in that process.
Last one here.
For me, there's a difference between trust based on experience and trust based on just blind trust. So for me, it's about noticing what actually happens and then being able to trust that that will probably happen again.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, I think I'm going to pass it over to Sean. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to share one?
I don't see anyone with their hands up right now, but please indicate if you have a response. I'll just say for myself that I have a little doubt about the technology and so forth, but I still go ahead and trust that everything is working. And I see that we do have some takers here. So Doug.
Thanks, Sean. For me, I feel trust in my body through intuition. There was one vivid experience in my work life where I was heading to meet a new client, and before I rapped on their door, every part of my being cried out not to take on the case. And it's one of, if not the only, regrets of my work life. So I need to listen to my body.
Thank you. And Deb.
Good morning, everyone. Similar to Doug, I feel trust in my body, but it isn't always kind of reliable. For me, trust has become earned as well. And it's not cookie cutter. It just depends on what's going on. And it boils down to trust in myself that even if I make a poor decision, that I can come back from it. That's the biggest trust, self-trust.
Thank you. I think that's everyone.
Well, that was very interesting for me, and also that, like Sean, I sometimes put my faith that the technology will work and trust that it will, and it did today, so I thank him. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Melina Bondy, who will be sharing a meditation and message with us. They began meditating 20 years ago and eventually taking monastic vows under Vietnamese peace activist and Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh in 2012. Melina returned to lay life in 2021 to study chaplaincy and psychotherapy at U of T. She also served as the director of Unicamp and program coordinator for the Unitarian Congregation of Guelph. So please, welcome, Melina.
Thank you, Gordon. Really wonderful to be here with familiar faces. Some of you I knew from Unicamp, and some of you I met, I think, at Guelph at some point, and others new. So thank you for having me. And we'll begin with a meditation. For this practice, we're going to be exploring some variations of trust. And for some people, closing your eyes for meditation turns on every alarm signal and you can't feel trust. So please really respect what kind of posture your body wants to be in, whether your eyes want to be open or closed or some sort of mix. So we're already going to be exploring if we can trust our body's cues as to how we want to do this meditation to begin with. Yeah, some of you might want to tuck your legs under you. Some of you might want to lie down. We're just going to be 5 minutes though. So just to let you know. Okay, so whatever you're bringing in with you, whatever is lingering, whatever has been put down is all welcome. And if it feels good to take a few deep breaths, please go ahead and do so. In a way, we're reminding our body what full breaths feel like, because sometimes we forget. Sometimes it just feels nice. And see if you can tune into the touch points, the places where whatever is underneath you is holding you up. Letting your breath just follow its own natural rhythm now. Most of us are sitting on chairs. For those of you at home, you may be on different surfaces, but we're all held up by something that is probably held up by a floor, that is held up by a building, that is held up by the earth. So wherever we are, whatever positions our bodies in, we are all physically held by the earth. And can we trust the earth to hold us just a little bit more? Maybe relax a little bit more, soften. Let go of a little tension if that feels okay and safe enough. And you may notice that the body is breathing itself. We don't actually have to work at it. Although for some it's a little harder, for some it's a little easier. And the air that is being breathed is just coming in and out on its own accord. Can we tune into a little bit of trust in this air and these bodies breathing, keeping us alive? So often we may feel that we're in this all alone, having to do so much for ourselves, but can we just spend the next minute in silence with a little bit more trust in the earth holding us, bodies breathing, the air that is given freely? And for the last minute or so, there may be a gesture that helps you get in touch with a sense of trust. For some people, it's a hand on the arm or the heart or the cheek. For some, it's just the way you put your hands in your lap that helps you feel a little more trust. And if you don't know what that is for you, you can play for the next minute. Most of your neighbors have their eyes closed, so no one's watching. But see, what is it like to intentionally make a shape, a gesture, a movement that brings a little more sense of trust. And as we close this particularly quiet part of the meditation, if there are any sighs or wiggles or stretches that would feel nice, can you trust the wisdom of your body to let your body do what it needs to do to transition into a listening mode as I'm going to be sharing a reflection? Gently letting light back in if you've had your eyes closed. Maybe shifting posture a little bit if you've noticed some discomfort. Thank you for joining this practice of trust. So when I was invited to come share here, Moira has sent me this email saying, could you share something about Buddhism and trust? And I thought, great. And I had all these ideas, and then at some point saw, oh, it's Easter Sunday. And none of the ideas or plans were specific about Easter, but I think we've already made a few connections and we'll continue to make some more. Is there anyone here that Easter is an important celebration to? Yeah. Yeah, great. So wonderful and welcome. And for those where Easter is not an important celebration, we're trying to find a happy middle. So I will start with a Buddhist story. And coming from having spent a lot of years in a Buddhist monastery and a lot of years of practice, that's really what I'm saturated in. But I was raised Christian and I'm saturated in that too. And I spent a lot of years in Unitarian congregations, so we're just gonna have a nice big mismatch and see what happens. So some of you may have heard this story, but you may not know where it comes from. It's called the Sutta, or the Discourse of the Buddha to the Kalamas. And there was a time, because for the entirety of the Buddha's career, he wandered from village to village, begging for food, offering teachings, often sleeping at the foot of a tree, although eventually there were buildings and monasteries and huts given. So one day he shows up in this new village, and some of the people bow to him, respectful, and others are kind of giving him the side eye. And they ask him a question. They say, you know, a lot of people like you have come by before. They tell us, believe what I say, and this is the wisest thing. And then the next person comes and they say, no, believe what I say. This is the wisest. And we don't know what to believe. We don't know what we can trust. How do you decide what to believe and what to trust in? And so the Buddha said, it's reasonable to not know who to trust. It's reasonable to be uncertain. And so he said, this is the part that a lot of you may have heard at some point in passing, don't go by hearsay. Do not go by tradition. Don't go by what seems appropriate. Do not go by scriptural authority. Do not go by thought. Do not go by inference. Do not go by logic. Do not go by personal preference. Do not go by the teacher's semblance of competence. Do not go by the thought, this person is our teacher. Instead, Kalamas, when you know for yourself, this is unwholesome, blameworthy, and condemned by the wise, when committed, it leads to harm and suffering. These are the things to abandon. And when you know for yourself, this is wholesome, this is blameless, this is praised by the wise, when committed, it leads to benefit and to happiness. Live in accordance. So as one of you said earlier, there's actually no formula, but there is a framework to work with, to engage in. And this question of what brings true happiness is really at the heart of Buddhism. As much as we talk about suffering, we seek to understand what causes pain and distress in order to not perpetuate unnecessary suffering. Life has inevitable suffering, but we can learn to not add the extra layer. And the key part in this teaching is that the Buddha is saying, know from your own experience, which some folks did mention already in their definitions of what trust is. It's even in the words trust and faith, in the dictionary, one often refers to the other, and vice versa. There isn't a big difference, but in common usage, trust is usually something that is verified by experience, whereas faith is trusting in something that we can't necessarily explain or have proof for, which is where faith is such an important word in some traditions, whereas trust in Buddhism and in Unitarianism is given more credence, right? Where's your experience teaching you? Okay, keep looking to your experience so you can have a lived wisdom, a lived trust in how you're living. And in my Buddhist tradition, trust isn't just important in determining, which teacher to listen to, as this particular sutta speaks of. We speak of refuge often. Has anyone heard of this term, the refuges in Buddhism? Yeah, a few of you. So if you think of the word refugio on the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage trail. These is the shelters that people can stay in on the trail. And when one is a refugee, one is seeking shelter someplace. And we seek shelter in places that we trust. So in Buddhism, we have this whole ceremonies and chants that we repeat often of I trust Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the teacher, the teachings, and community. But the thing is, you don't have to be Buddhist to take up an active practice of refuge, because what's really important is being intentional about where we are placing our trust and what we are growing trust in, because we're always trusting in something. Just as folks were saying earlier, there's doubt and trust, and they really live together. And our actions usually express what we're really trusting in. I know for me, I'm a student at U of T right now, and when I have a lot of papers to write, I often trust in Ben & Jerry's, tubs of cookie dough ice cream to get me through paper writing more so than extra sleep. But there are other times when I really trust in, wise counsel of a friend, and I'm trusting in my own capacity to find some peace. And we're always in this mix of acting in ways that align with the trust that we want to be cultivating, and then going into the habitual trust that may not be aligned with our highest values. But that's just what makes us human. So this teaching or this practice of refuge is really inviting us to be intentional. As I said, it doesn't have to be to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, but to take time and go, well, wait a minute, what teachings, which friends, which media sources do I have trust in? And what if I just put a little more energy there? And what will that do for me? And keep then looking at our experience and then going, well, what does it do? What does it actually do? And then learning and giving our own feedback loop, or creating our own feedback loop. So for my own experience, I took this giant leap of faith to join a monastery. Even before then, when I took the ceremony to officially become Buddhist, to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So in a ceremony with Thich Nhat Hanh in 2005, I was so excited. And there was trust in it, because I had experienced these teachings, this teacher, and my life was becoming more peaceful. I was becoming happier. So I had trust that came from experience. I also had faith, because I didn't really know what it meant, but something was drawing me in this direction. And I showed up at this ceremony during a retreat at 6 o'clock in the morning, walking up and there was 200 of us in the middle of a hall. The retreat was like 1,000 people, and the monastics were lined up with their golden robes. And I said the words, I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, with 200 people, and I cried, and it was so moving to get to have a clarity of, this is what I trust. And it drew me in so deeply that 7, 8 years later, I took formal vows and joined this community, which was quite a leap of faith. I really didn't know what I was getting into, and I had been very inspired by the phrase, leap and the net will appear. Because I knew that I didn't know what I was getting into, but I had more faith combined with my trust of lived experience in the practice in the community. And then this magnetic sense of calling. And shaved my head, put on a brown robe, gave up my bank account, my phone, house, everything, apartment. And for some years, it was just the most beautiful thing I could imagine, even as it was incredibly difficult to share a room, to live with hundreds of people, to host retreats for thousands of people. This was not a silent cave. This was a very, very active community with a world-renowned teacher and people coming in from around the world. So I did everything from making tofu to running a bookshop and driving shoppers on grocery trips that would take 8 or 10 hours, as well as meditate a lot and listen to wonderful teachings. And then come the 4th year or so, I was struggling. And I kept turning back to, wait a minute, I made this vow, I trust this. I have faith, I leapt, my net is gonna appear, I'm gonna find happiness, is what I was actually assuming subconsciously, even though I didn't have those words. And so I kept pushing myself to stay and facing my doubts and practicing and working with them, questioning them, talking to people. And by the 5th year, I actually fell into quite a depression. I had pushed myself too far, and I wasn't trusting my body telling me it was okay to join, but now you have to leave. Because I thought that having real trust would mean staying, no matter what. Even though others left and I thought it was perfectly fine, I had this construct for myself. And eventually I did leave, and I was quite destroyed for quite a while, is how I felt. You know, whenever I tune inside, the word was broken, shattered, failure. And I was really shocked by the word failure in particular, because for most of my life, I didn't believe in failure. It's like, as long as you learn, there is no failure, which seemed like a really healthy attitude towards life. But once I was in this space, I realized I was still terrified of failure, and so I would only reframe challenging experiences. And I had this one day, I was actually in a church service, and I don't know what was going on in the service, but I was tuning in within, and that voice that speaks sometimes said to me, this was a chance to learn to fail. That's what this whole experience was. And it was incredibly painful and humbling, humiliating in a way inside myself, and also one of the most important lessons of my life. These doubts, I thought I wasn't supposed to listen to them, but actually I was supposed to listen to them and learn to work with them differently. And I thought that trust meant that if I really trusted, it would lead to something particular, the way that I wanted, if I took that big leap. And through the years, have realized, as I'm sure so many of you have learned through your own experiences too, that, like actually someone said, I think it was our last person online, that trust isn't about if you trust deeply, then you're gonna get what you want the way you want it. But the trust that we really need to cultivate is the trust that we will survive. We will find the strength to get through what we didn't think we could get through. That is always possible. And strangely, that's also some people's variation of what Easter means. That even Jesus, who loved and trusted God completely and lived this radical life, total faith, and totally outside of what the mainstream was expecting for a Jewish preacher in Palestine living under Roman colonial occupation. He was living way, way out there, and he had total faith. And people were expecting, well, if he's really the Son of God, he's going to get all this adulation, right? He's going to get the glory. But that's not how God, the universe, works. Even Jesus died. But then something different happened if we understand the resurrection, at least metaphorically. That the worst thing that could happen still wasn't the end. That it's still worth it to trust even if things don't go the way we hope that it will go. Even if we feel shattered and broken, because then we can learn a durable, real-world trust, not a magical thinking trust. And I'm all into magic, but psychologically magical thinking is delusional thinking. So doubt, there's so many things that could be said, and I was going to say them, and I usually give 30 to 60-minute Dharma talks, so trying to squeeze into a short message is not the easiest thing, but a good practice. What I did want to say about doubt is that in Buddhism, we have two ways of looking at doubt in different traditions. In the practice often that we see in like Sri Lanka, in Thailand, in Burma, doubt is called a hindrance because it blocks concentration, it blocks wisdom. However, there's a whole list of hindrances, and the way you work with doubt and all the hindrances is you just need to get to know them. Once you recognize doubt as doubt, it is no longer a hindrance. You don't have to get rid of it. There's nothing wrong with you for having it. It's not a failure or even a problem. And especially with our self-doubt. Once we can recognize, oh, wait a minute, that voice that's saying you can't do this, you suck. That's doubt speaking, that's not reality. It's a thought that's coming and going. Once we can actually recognize that, we are no longer controlled by doubt. And that's actually the whole path. It's so much easier than trying to get rid of all the doubt and never experience it. So befriending the hindrances is one way of letting doubt become a friend and a helper. And in the Zen tradition out of Japan, they say this even more eloquently, with a little more gusto, as is the case often in Japanese Zen, that one great master had said, great doubt, great awakening. No doubt, no awakening. Because you need that grit to get into the oyster, to have something to rub against, to grow your pearls of wisdom. You need something to compost to be able to then grow fruits and vegetables and trees with. So we just need to know, are we getting into the doubt that shuts us down, that leads us into collapse, that your body can feel the kind of doubt that if we stay with it is actually going to harm us, bad for our mental health, for our physical health. But then there's another kind of doubt that really we can pivot, even if we find ourselves in the unhelpful doubt. Just need to remember, oh, wait a minute, what if I turn this into the kind of doubt that makes me question, get more engaged? Go, what is this really about? And then it becomes the doubt of awakening. It's actually incredibly simple, not easy to do, but we can all do it. And so even Jesus had his doubts. We all have our doubts, and I loved how some folks said that there's always doubt and trust together, right? There's not a problem in having doubts, but how do we relate to it? And do we let it become this fuel, this grit, the good trouble, thinking of John, Senator John Lewis, who talk about the good trouble is like that grit that is good. We need some grit. We need some of that doubt to fuel us. If we use it wisely, it can actually be the key to our spiritual path. So thank you for listening. I hope that we all get to use some doubt and experience some trust and get to know them both and use them well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Now is the time for our offertory. Sharing of ourselves is part of every faith. Now, volunteer efforts are essential, but the proceeds of the sale of Hiawatha barely covers our rent. Everything else comes from your contributions. Members of Neighborhood choose a variety of ways to give, either through the basket, predated checks, e-transfers with automatic withdrawals. If you're online, there's a link displayed on the screen and in the chat, which leads you to our donations page. In all ways, I ask you to be generous. And the greeters will pass the baskets while the choir sings. Please make sure that the baskets are also passed to the choir as well. And now I leave it to our choir.
Hello again. We are going to be singing Canon de la Paix, and I'm going to offer you a little translation. But first, I'd just like to clarify that in music, a canon with one single N is not to be confused with cannon with a double N, which refers to a large caliber gun. This piece was written in response to the horrors of World War I. Listen, the time is coming. People will one day know the truth. The lion will lie down with the lamb, and we will melt the pikes, the long spears, for scythes, and sabers for harrows. It's another farm tool used to break up soil. Peace will be our fight. Make this time come. Canon de la paix.
If you have found love and acceptance here, if you have found home here, if you have known kindred spirits here, let this offering be a token of gratitude for our common life as we build the common good.
Let's sing together. We rise, sing together, circle around for freedom. Song of peace for everyone. We'll sing it 3 times through. Circle round for freedom. Circle round for peace. For all of us in prison. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for
like to invite Dora and Jamal and Layla to come up again and extinguish our chalice for us.
Our closing blessing today is going to be sung for you by the choir with words coming out of our congregation from Lauren Renzetti. May this wide world ever be new to you. The tiniest detail come clear. May the noise of the day recede. May you leave this place with space in your soul for wonder, magic, and love. May you feel the warmth in all that surrounds you. Blessed be. Blessed be.
We have a tradition of forming a circle and holding hands to end our service, and I ask you to do that now. I offer the question again so you can discuss it after the service and in the breakout rooms. Thank you again to Melina for sharing her message today. May this month be a time to build trust with everyone that cherishes this community. For if there is trust, there is no limits to how we may grow. This service is ended. Go in peace.